आइए हम सुने विज्ञान की अनकही कहानियाँ। आइए हम सुने विज्ञान की अनसुनी कहानियाँ। एक नई दुनिया की आवाज़ आपकी आवाज़, विज्ञान की आवाज़, की आवाज़।
Celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we bring you a podcast series on STEM popularization, science, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine, supported and catalyzed by the National Council for Science and Technology Communication, Government of India. This program is produced by Media for Community Foundation. Creative content and technical support is given by Purvasha Banerjee and Shushanto Das.
एक नई दुनिया की आवाज़ आपकी आवाज़, विज्ञान की आवाज़, की आवाज़, की आवाज़।
Indian Statistical Institute is a public university which is recognized as an institute of national importance. It grew out of the statistical laboratory set up by Prashanta Chandra Mohananobish in Presidency College, Kolkata. Established in 1931, this unique institution of India is one of the oldest institutions focused on statistics. Primary activities of ISI are research and training of statistics, development of theoretical statistics, and its applications in various natural and social sciences. In this podcast, we are happy to present Professor Smarajit Bose, Professor in charge in Applied Statistical Division in Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. Let us hear from his own voice about his own academic journey.
I am Professor Smarajit Bose, currently Professor in charge of the Applied Statistics Division in Indian Statistical Institute. If I go back, actually I was also a student of ISI back in 1981 to 1986 when I did my Bachelor's of Statistics and Master's of Statistics. And then I was fortunate to get into the PhD program of University of California, Berkeley, which used to be the number one at that time and still I think ranked very highly. So I got the opportunity to go for the PhD program, and there I had the good fortune of interacting with professors whose textbooks we read during our bachelor's and master's program here, and they're all stalwarts in the field. Eventually, I ended up with working with Professor Leo Breiman, the name known to everyone in this field as probably god of machine intelligence, machine learning, etc. But the interesting part is that initially he was a probabilist, completely theoretician. Then he left for industry for some time. In fact, he had a probability textbook, which I read in ISI when I was a bachelor student. Then when he went to industry, he suddenly transformed himself into applied statistician. And the kind of work he used to do, I really appreciated. And when I requested him to be my supervisor, he readily agreed. And then, coincidentally, something happened. At that point of time, suddenly neural network came into life because of an algorithm called backpropagation algorithm. I'll touch upon those things a little bit later. So there was a lecture by a computer science professor in our department, and my advisor later told me that I think they are reinventing the wheel. We know how to do these things in statistics. It's just a communication gap between the two subjects. So why don't you find out what they're doing, and can you replicate that with statistical interpretation? Because what they're doing is completely like a black box. I'll also touch upon that. So as statisticians, we always would like to have more understanding of the structure and also the limitations and strengths of the methods, which is missing. So that's how I became interested in this field. And through my thesis, my advisor went into computer science, that is the interface between statistics and computer science. And the contribution he made in that area, made him like well known to both the fields, computer science. And so wherever I go, even now, if someone hears that you're a student of Leo Breiman, I kind of get a little bit better treatment. So I was really fortunate, and unfortunately he's no more. He was already pretty old when I was working with him. But the contribution he made even in his later life is simply, overwhelming. I am nowhere compared to that, but I tried to work in that area. So my contribution initially was that to understand the computer science algorithm and make meaning of itself. And then when I published, I found out that there are other people also at the same time became interested. And that evolved into what I call statistical learning. That is what I'll be talking about today.
Professor Smarajit Bose speaks on his contribution to computer science algorithm and statistical learning.
So it is basically solving real-life problems. And these real-life problems are, one part is definitely to understand human cognition. It could be speech, it could be hearing. Nowadays, in fact, it could be like even smelling. We're talking about artificial nose and so forth, so that the machine can replicate what humans can do. So you give pictures, images to the machine should be able to say what kind of picture it is. And you have seen, I'm sure, in Google and other applications that we are really doing good. So given a particular image, Google can identify most of the things about the image. It can annotate, it can tell you, what are the components of the image. So that requires lots of steps, and definitely statistics is one of them. So people may not know that. People think that everything is done by machine, but you have to train the machine. And that's where it comes as artificial intelligence or machine learning. But the difference between statistical learning and machine learning is that in machine learning, you are more or less interested in solving the problem, just particular problem, and you get good results, and you give an algorithm to something like, deep learning and whatever these buzzwords now. So basically the machine learns itself, though obviously we told the machine how to learn, and then that's it. Then it becomes a black box because you have the model. So you give the input and you are getting the right kind of predictions or whatever it is for that particular problem. The problem is we have no idea what is going on inside. We don't understand anything about the structure of the problem. But as a statistician, we are not happy with that. So statistical algorithm is something which should have better properties in the sense that we should be able to understand the structure. And not only that, we also will be talking about how good or how accurate the prediction is going to be.
Professor Bose speaks in detail about the practical application of his study.
What is the margin of error? I'll just give a simple example in statistics. I'm sure that you have seen many applications of statistics, but one of them is very common, particularly these days of elections and polls, and we have these opinion polls. And that's a very statistical experiment because you're only talking to a few people and trying to understand like what might happen on the election day. And you may have seen the results. It says that this candidate may get 55% of the vote, and then there's a margin of error 3%. What is that margin of error? That's where statistics comes in. In any statistical algorithm, we do not just provide an estimate, but we also provide some margin of error, because you have to understand that we have not gone through the entire population. So whatever the truth is in the population, we could be close to it, but there will be some kind of deviation. So studying that is part of statistics, and that is what I wanted to do in this computer science area, that understand the problems, find out the limitations, and not only that, there are other questions. So suppose if you talk about a computer science model like neural network, deep learning, these are huge structures. But is it really necessary? That means, do I really need that many layers, that many computing nodes, etc.? So my contribution during my PhD days was to replicate that computer science algorithm into a statistical algorithm, which will compete with the computer science algorithm, but with better statistical properties. And what happened after that was that that ended up being like a series of publications from my side. Even to work in the computer science area, combine the two things, and then answering certain questions that was not possible by the computer scientists. That is, what should be the size of the network, and those kind of things are easily doable if you understand the problem statistically. So then I became really interested in applications, because as I said, The applications are in human cognition and so forth. So I worked for a long time on what is called speaker identification. You may know that a lot of times we get audio tapes and we are not sure whether the identity claimed is that person or not. There are court cases. There are this famous notorious terrorist for whom we were looking for, whether he was alive or not. So I'll not name anybody, but those kind of applications where you have some samples of that person's voice and then a new voice sample comes. Can you really identify, or can you say that this is the correct identity of the speaker? So that kind of a problem, and again, like we are doing very well with that. Then I was also involved in what is called content-based image retrieval. So give an image to the machine and there's a database, so machine should be retrieving similar images. Now what is similar, that is again, you have to train the computer, but then you see the applications now in Google and it's done very nicely.
Professor speaks about the collaborations.
So in terms of this research in this area, I think there are a lot of groups who are working on this worldwide, and as academician we don't really compete, but we collaborate. And I think the Indian statisticians always held one of the top positions if you talk about our contribution. So particularly this institute, Indian Statistical Institute, can boast of many statisticians who are well known worldwide, and we are very strong in theory, but now the subject has changed into applications. And the younger generation, I'm not young anymore, but like the next generations, we have got very nice, intelligent people who have joined recently. So we are trying to go into that direction where you work on more applications. And the other applications which are huge now in this field is like financial sector, where we get a lot of good placements. So every companies like banks and other financial companies, they come because they have these problems. Like I give one particular example which should be known to anyone. Like there are credit card applications, bank loan applications. You have to decide whether this customer is going to be good or bad, whether it's going to default or not. So it's just one example. There are plenty of examples. Then there are questions of medical diagnosis. So given some data on a particular person, you have to identify whether that person has the disease or not from the past data about patients. Then there are things about atmospheric climate changes, satellite images. You try to identify whether this is a water body or not. You want to measure the harvest from satellite images. All those things come into this broad area, and where I have worked on this, and there are plenty of works that is going on in this institute, and I definitely would say that we are at the top of the competition, and also we are collaborating with industry because their applications really, they need us. They always come for help, and do a lot of consulting and collaboration with them. So hopefully this field is going to grow. And one last thing, the distinction between the statistical learning and machine learning may not be very clear to everybody, but for any kind of randomness, like because you know that you are dealing with only a small part of the data, and if you take different data, you get different answers. So to understand that, you need statistical training, and that is where statistics comes in almost in every problem. And I think there's a huge scope of statisticians to work in this area.
We are thankful to Professor Smarajit Bose for providing us with his valuable time and sharing such information regarding his research work.